The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of CNS Channel 6.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Matters of Public Importance, right here on Channel 6. And I'm yours, Gail Teixeira, representing the Parliamentary Opposition and the People's Progressive Party Civic. And this program on Matters of Public Importance brings you information and discussions on matters and of issues that of concern to you, the Guyanese public, every Thursday between 12:30 and 1:30, right here on Channel 6. And as usual, before we get into the meat of the program, I remind you of the numbers that you can use to call in, 225-0010 and 225-0008. Please remember, if your number is blocked, I will not be able to take the call. So please remember that. Well, when last we met on this program, it was September the 19th. The caretaker, President Granger, became illegal President Granger as of midnight on September the 18th, 2019. September 18, 2019 will be recorded in our history as the day when the Constitution was subverted and overthrown by David Granger. Nothing can erase that fact. This was the date, like a line in the sand, by which he had to act, and which he crossed and took our country into unconstitutional rule. The only person responsible for putting our country in this perilous state is no other than David Granger. This will be his legacy as a leader and president of our country for generations to come. He crossed the red line. Believing, I am convinced, that he could have done this with impunity and that there would have been no consequences, that no one could or would dare to stop him. After all, he had gotten away with not holding elections for 9 months after the no-confidence vote of December 21st, 2018, and the CCJ ruling of June the 18th and its subsequent orders. And of course, the Constitutional Article 106.6 and 106.7 were also absolutely clear and unambiguous. This anachronistic, outdated, emperor-like superiority attitude to the Constitution and the people's will continued until October 1st, when Granger was forced to comply and issue the proclamation announcing March 2nd, 2019 as the date for elections. The fact that Guyana was the first in the world of democratic nations that did not hold elections as required in all parliamentary democracies following a no-confidence motion, the fact that we were the first where the electoral body, Guyana Elections Commission, empowered by the Constitution to hold and manage the electoral machinery and protect the people's right to vote at free and fair elections, refused to commence preparations for elections in compliance with the Constitution for over 9 months. So these are our first. Aren't we proud? We in the PPP had warned that when, as a nation, we reached September 18th and no elections were held, that things would be different in Guyana. It would not be business as usual, and we were and are right. Things have changed. Since that day, much has happened. On September 19th itself, a strongly worded statement by the US, UK, and European Union ambassadors in Guyana was issued and read as follows. And I'm quoting, "However, we deeply regret that by surpassing September the 18th, the government is currently in breach of the Constitution, following its failure to adhere to the decisions of the Caribbean Court of Justice on June the 18th and its subsequent orders. This situation comes at a great cost to the people of Guyana. The present political uncertainty undermines Guyanese institutions, compromises economic opportunities, and delays development across all areas, including infrastructure, education, health, and social services. It also hinders our ability to support Guyana's development needs. We therefore call upon the President to set an election date immediately in full compliance with Guyana's constitution, end quote. So that was September the 19th. Statements were also issued by civil society organizations in the days that followed by the Guyana Bar Association, the Private Sector Commission, the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce, the American Chamber of Commerce in Guyana, AmCham Guyana, FITUG, the Federation of Independent Trade Unions of Guyana, the Central Islamic Organization of Guyana, the Guyana Hindu Dharmic Sabha, and Zadok Fellowship, representing a coalition of many Christian groups, all calling on the government to comply with the Constitution and call elections. The Guyana Bar Association statement was particularly pointed, and I'd like to quote from that statement to you. And I'm quoting, "The constitutional rule and responsibility of the President was to fix a date for elections within the 3-month period set out in the Constitution in the absence of a parliamentary extension of that period, which extension the Bar Council notes was not sought and or obtained before the period expired. The constitutional duty and responsibility of the Guyana Elections Commission was to be ready to administer and supervise elections within the time encompassed by the 3-month period so as to comply with the Constitution. By failing to abide by the clear and unambiguous terms of the Constitution, the government of Guyana has abdicated its responsibility, violated the Constitution, is operating outside of the rule of law, and in breach of internationally recognized standards of democracy." End quote. That statement came after September the 18th passed. On September the 19th, the day when we met here, the chair of GCOM, Justice Claudette Singh, made a decision and informed the President of the date by which GCOM would be ready to hold elections. To everyone's surprise, she informed him that GCOM would be ready by the end of February 2020. Her letter to the President stated that, and I quote, "I have concluded and take this opportunity to officially inform you that the Guyana Elections Commission will be able to deliver credible elections by the end of February 2020, end quote. Surely this cannot be a coincidence that this deadline is the same as that advocated by the government-appointed commissioners in GCOM since its February 2019 framework that elections will be held in March 2020. The PPP has been contending that elections can and should be held long before the end of the year, and we still believe that. In fact, opposition leader Barry Jagdeo made a case for this when he met with the Elections Commission in early September. Mr. Jagdeo also made it clear that a March elections date was totally out of the question. The chairman of GCOM assured both the PPP delegation and the APNU AFC government delegation, who she met afterwards, that she was working towards elections before year end. I heard her say, I was there, quote, "I am working towards a timeline for having elections long before the end of the year," end quote. However, disappointed as we were by her announcement, our focus will be on ensuring that there are free and fair elections and to protect our democratic right to vote at free and fair elections and elections free from fear. The fact that all this happened after the deadline of September 18th cannot change the fact that Granger is an illegal president occupying the office. It didn't matter which date the chair of GCOM gave after September 18th. By this latest decision, it is allowing a usurper in government to continue to remain in office for another 5 months against the will of the people, and a government that has lost its legitimacy to be in office since December 21st, 2018. The PPP made it clear that we would peacefully protest Mr. Granger and his cabinet wherever they went until a date is named for elections. Granger and his ministers were greeted by protests in various regions, and Granger attended the Pegasus Hotel, Guyana Manufacturers and Services Association luncheon on September 20th, where he was reminded both internally and externally that he was illegal and elections had to be called immediately. Following that, on September 23rd, he attended the Chinese reception, where he was greeted by a candlelight vigil, reminding him of his illegality and calling for an election date. Both of these protests were peaceful, with large numbers of people obeying the laws, wearing their peaceful picket signs. The government, obviously, clearly in siege mentality, blocked off the roads, both around the Ministry of the Presidency, Pegasus Hotel, the Convention Center, discommoding and causing chaos in traffic for people trying to get about their business, to go to work in the mornings and or to go home in the afternoon. And of course, distracting police who seemed to be ordered that their enemies were the picketers and not criminals. So the police were pulled out in huge numbers in riot gear, etc., lots of vehicles, blocking off streets from Sheriff and Railway Embankment all the way up to UG and all the roads leading into that, around the Ministry of the Presidency, around State House on Main Street, and of course around the Pegasus, all over the place during those days. Riot police were called out to deal with the picketers on both occasions. However, the picketers gave them no cause, as everything was peaceful. Attempts to intimidate by Granger and government officials against hooliganism, as they call the picketers in these events, have fallen on deaf ears. We, the Guyanese, know hooliganism, which we've experienced firsthand at each election, and we know which party has been responsible for hooliganism. PPP protests have never been, or are they now, hooligans. They are not led by hooligans, and their behavior is not one of hooliganism. By the way, the same police who were called out in huge numbers with all their gear, etc., are the same police that this government stopped paying the 13th month bonus pay after coming into office, and who gave no salary increases as promised in the 2015 election campaign. Maybe reality had not sunken in when on September the 18th, Granger stated, quote, "It is very uncomfortable for me as a head of state to labor under the restrictions of an interim administration," he said. He said, "Many of my ministers have had their travels restricted. We cannot plan a budget or bring a budget to Parliament, and we cannot engage in certain types of projects which are regarded as irreversible. And the whole business of the government has been slow because we're obedient to and compliant with the instructions of the CCJ since July. So it is uncomfortable for me to remain in this condition," says Granger. Well, first of all, the statement is completely untrue. His cabinet ministers have been traveling. Up to recently, they have attended the UN General Assembly. They have gone to Trotman to sign an agreement on Amazon and climate change. They have been traveling to different conferences in the world. They have been going to Trinidad for the business exposition, which the Prime Minister went for. They have been going to conferences. So the fact that their travels are restricted, one wonders, maybe only because they're not telecast as they were before. They have signed contracts and agreements since December 21st, 2018. They've been spending large sums of money and are claiming to need to download billions of dollars in supplementaries as recent as yesterday. So they're talking about, again, dipping into the coffers with a $300 billion budget that they got for 2019, and it seems that money is running dry. Look at the level of squandermania. You have sea defenses that have not been properly repaired and shored up in anticipation, one, for unusual high tides, unpredictable weather, and also just climate change. But the government wants to spend over $1 billion on building a new headquarters for the Guyana Civil Aviation Association, claiming that it spends $42 million in rent per annum for 2 buildings. Well, if we look at the maths of $42 million per annum on rent for 2 buildings, which is extraordinarily high, of course, that it will take the government 25 years in rent to build a new headquarters for the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority. Is that a real need for our money right now? Or is it not cash transfers to our children as we had with the cash care program for all children registered in school? The amount of money to build the civil aviation headquarters could get every child in Guyana registered in school at this moment $10,000 minimally. So where is the government's priorities? Giving out bags of rice and David Granger satchels, a yellow and green. Is that where all the money is going? And so what Mr. Granger said is not true. They have been in the breach of the Constitution in the main as regards to a caretaker government. Interestingly enough, and I pointed out in the last program, he ignored the fact and did not have any discomfort at all with the fact that his cabinet and he lost the mandate to govern at the November 12, 2018 local government elections and lost the confidence of the legislature on December 21st. He had no discomfort in the fact that his administration was toppled on December 21st. But he did not seem to find that uncomfortable. He did not find it uncomfortable that he was in breach of the Constitution of Guyana by refusing to set a date for elections prior to March 21st, 2019. We noticed that while insisting on awaiting GCOM's advice before setting polling dates, Article 61 of the Constitution of Guyana remained untouched, which gave him powers to dissolve Parliament and set a date for general and regional elections. This point had been lamented by legal luminaries and other local stakeholders to the President, but to no avail. Ironically, on October 1st, when the proclamation was made to name the date of March 2nd for the election of members to the National Assembly and the Regional Democratic Councils, what article of the Constitution was used? Article 61, the same one that has always given him the power to name a date for elections. It is Granger who denied the Guyanese electorate the right to elect their representatives since March the 21st. And as we said, the red line has been crossed, and the president is no longer caretaker, but illegal. Maybe it is when on September 23rd, when the Secretary General, Baroness Scotland of the Commonwealth, issued the following statement, that maybe Granger's impervious armor in defiance of the Constitution and the will of the people weakened. Remember, my friends, that the Commonwealth is made up of 53 independent member states, and the Secretary General speaks on behalf of that body of democratic nations. So she doesn't speak on her own behalf. She speaks on behalf of 53 nations. And here is what she said. Quote, the Commonwealth Secretary General, Patricia Scotland, urges the President of Guyana and all relevant stakeholders and institutions to restore constitutional rule in Guyana by immediately setting an early election date in consonance with the Constitution, enabling elections to be held without further delay. The Secretary General has taken note of the 18th June 2019 ruling of the Caribbean Court of Justice and its consequential orders of the 12th of July 2019. The CCJ's ruling was clear that the Guyana Constitution sets out certain requirements for the time of election after the valid passing of a no confidence motion. The rule of law and constitutional governance are fundamental Commonwealth values to which Guyana has subscribed. In this regard, and in accordance with the ruling of the Caribbean Court of Justice, a general election in Guyana is now constitutionally overdue. A general election should be held in accordance with the unambiguous constitutional imperative to do so. The Secretary General has spoken with the chair of the Guyana Elections Commission and discussed Commonwealth support to GCOM, end quote. It is after this statement that the government and media advised the public that the President will address the nation on September 25th. Prior to that address, the same day, Mr. Granger said the dissolution of Parliament would occur when I am satisfied that the entire process as required by the Elections Commission can move without obstruction on to the date the chairman herself has nominated. I responded to her and I had discussions with the cabinet. Naturally, you would like to get from her more details. I have to find out from her if she has any needs, and it is for this reason I have not dissolved Parliament and will remain in session until. I hope this evening I will be able to make a public announcement to the nation on the date, end quote. To add further insult to the Guyanese people on September 25th, however, when he did address the nation, he played mind games by saying that the earliest possible date for elections would be on March the 2nd, 2019, and placed the onus on the opposition to return to Parliament on October 10th to extend the life of the Parliament. Following his address, Lap Puppy, I call the AFC the Lap Puppy of the partnership, APNU, immediately jumped in to show its loyalty and supported Granger and called for the opposition to go back to Parliament to extend the life of the Parliament. The PPP publicly exposed these games and called on the President to name a date for election and said it was unnecessary for the opposition to return to Parliament as Granger had power under the Constitution to name a date. Therefore, Granger cannot go back to the National Assembly. He has exhausted all avenues and that were constitutionally available to him. The PPP said it would not lend any support to return to the now dissolved Parliament to shore up an illegal Granger and his administration and therefore legitimize his illegalities in the last 9 months. The following day, September 26, on the margins of another public activity Granger attended at the Cyril Potter College of Education, the media courted him about the actual date for elections because this earliest possible date did not really say that that was when elections were going to be. So the media wanted clarification. It is then he stated that the date for elections was March the 2nd and that it was unnecessary to have the 2/3 vote of the opposition. Within less than 12 hours, Granger had done a complete U-turn. However, he still had not issued a proclamation as required. On September 26, GCOM issued the order to commence claims and objections starting October 1st. And as you know, it was a total mess. The order was a complete mess. First of all, it stated that all registrants on the list would have to go into the centers with their ID cards to verify that who they were on the list of registrants. This was totally madness and certainly a slap in the face and contempt of the ruling of the Chief Justice Roxanne George just in August 2019. Furthermore, it gives strange dates that were not approved by the GCOM. So this was the confusion on September 26th. On September 27th, there was a second joint statement by the US, UK, and the European Union. It stated the following: the US, UK, and European Union note the President's announcement of a firm date for election of March the 2nd, 2020. It is now essential to ensure free and fair elections, which we are pleased to support with election assistance and monitoring along with other colleagues in the international community." End quote. On September 28th, the Secretary General, Mr. Luis Almagro, of the 35-member country Organization of American States, issued the following statement. Now, the OAS represents all the countries that fall in the Americas. So that comes from Canada, United States, all of Central America, all of South America, and the Caribbean, and the English, Spanish, Dutch, Caribbean. So that this is a very powerful statement that is made by the Secretary General on behalf of 35 countries. Here it goes. The General Secretary of the Organization of American States has taken note of the announcement by President Granger that the next general regional elections in Guyana will be held on March 2nd, 2020. The OAS General Secretary underlines the importance to the people of Guyana of leaving behind the period of political uncertainty as soon as possible. The OAS General Secretariat looks forward to the issuance of the proclamation required by Guyana's Constitution to firmly establish the date for the elections. The General Secretariat will continue to follow the situation in Guyana and remains available to provide support as the authorities may require in ensuring the next elections meet the standards of transparency, credibility, and integrity required of all democracies, end quote. Therefore, by September 29th, just a few days ago, the OAS, representing 35 member countries, plus the Commonwealth, representing 53 member countries, and the European Union, representing 28 countries, totaling 116 countries, has spoken out through their umbrella bodies on Guyana's government's defiance of constitutional rule and demanding a date for election by proclamation. The Organization of American States, the Commonwealth, the EU, the British and American governments deemed Guyana to be an unconstitutional state after President Granger missed the September 18th mark in calling an election. They demanded a legal instrument, proclamation, meaning it cannot be reversed capriciously by whim and fancy by Mr. Granger. This broad array of 116 countries, through their umbrella organizations, calling on the Guyana government to take action, cannot be treated lightly by anyone, and we in Guyana should be proud that we have allies and friends in the international community. As of today, 4 U.S. congressmen and women have also lent their support for constitutional rule and democracy in Guyana and free and fair elections. The pressure has been mounting, and as we said, nothing was normal after November 18th. But Granger didn't believe that. He thought he could kerfuffle the Guyanese and the international community. It is no wonder that by midnight on September the 30th, 2019, Granger could not hold out and had to do what the Constitution had allowed him to do long before March the 21st, 2019, and issued the proclamation naming March the 2nd, 2019, for election of members of the National Assembly and the Regional Democratic Councils. 14 months after the no confidence motion, Mr. Granger had an additional lease of life of over a year past what was the constitutional required time. And I believe, and it is my belief, that were it not for the pressure of the international community and the Guyanese people, that he would have stretched this much further into 2020, maybe September 2020, when elections were due. This, I have traced these events and the stakeholders involved in bringing us to the point where Mr. Granger had to issue the proclamation for elections. This is the famous proclamation that we've all been waiting for. The famous proclamation, published on October the 1st. Certainly he signed it at some time, midnight of September 30th. But here it says, elections to be held under Article 61 for the members of the National Assembly. March the 2nd, it was in the Constitution all the time, and only had to do with his refusal to abide by the Constitution. This is a victory for the people of Guyana. We must own it. We must own our victory. We must own the fact that had we not championed our cause for the last 9 months, internationally, locally, in every community, in every village of Guyana, and meeting the diplomatic community, going out and sending letters into the international community. Without all of that, this victory we would not have had. We must be proud of this victory. We must take ownership of this victory, that it is ours. It is a victory of the power of the people in this country through peaceful protest, through the use of the media and social media and Facebook and TV and radio programs and letters in the media and bottom house grassroots meetings and walkabouts in the communities, and to the international communities that made our voices loudly heard that this APNU AFC masquerade had to stop. Civil society in Guyana and Guyanese support groups in New York and the international community all contributed to this victory. The victory is we have a date for elections after 9 months, going on 10 months. I've been saying at the end of this program for over a year now that struggle we shall, and silent we shall not be. Silence is the greatest enemy to democracy. Silence makes those in power think they can get away with anything. Silence helps those who want more control and less democracy, those who want to move this country to a police state. I've been saying that ad nauseum at the end of each program. But the events between March the 18th, September the 18th, and October the 1st, and all that went before it, we weren't silent. And we were able to stop the Granger-led government from taking elections into late next year as they planned. Now, we the people, and the political parties, and my party, the People's Progressive Party Civic, can go full throttle ahead preparing for elections, the election campaign, and for the PPPC winning those elections. I have said on this program, the People's Progressive Party Civic is a government in waiting, and that our presidential candidate, Irfan Ali, is a president in waiting. Of course, before we come to some of the more serious work we have to do, I had to add in this funny story. Well, it's funny to me, and I hope you find it funny too. But of course, yesterday afternoon, I saw this in the media, and it made me had to smile and shake my head in disbelief. I wasn't sure which one to feel. But there was a report, and sometimes we have to share light moments, don't we? That clearly, Dr. Karen Cummings, clearly out of her league in the area of foreign affairs, yesterday dismissed statements made by the international community on Guyana's constitutional and political situation, saying that all this agitation I think it is uncalled for, quote unquote. I don't think we need sanctions at this point in time, she said at a press conference at Takatu Lodge yesterday. She continued, we strive to ensure that we don't interfere in other people's territory. Even the CARICOM's position is non-interference, non-intervention, Dr. Cummings says. And then she went on to explain what good work she did at the UN trying to debunk the position of the 90% of the Guyanese people that our constitution has been thrown out the window. And therefore she admits at the press conference, at the recent UN General Assembly, Cummings said she was able to clear up misunderstandings in a discussion with the UN Secretary General and the Commonwealth Secretary General. In her meeting, she said, with the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, Dr. Cummings said the Guyana delegation was happy to say, while there may have been some hiccups, Guyana is at peace, with no wars and no lives lost, with peaceful citizens going about their business, such as going to market. Of course, she blamed Dr. Barrett Jagdeo for what she called these misunderstandings. And she added, but when they would have looked and see Guyana, we're going ahead with our development agenda, and it's business as usual, says Dr. Karen Cummings. She said, in regards to the Commonwealth statement, I haven't received any statement, because what is not documented is not done. So that as far as she's concerned, the government will remain in power and continue with its transformative agenda until a new president is sworn in. Clearly, Cummings is another illegal minister living in some la-la delusional land who I'm sure doesn't even understand what the Guyana Constitution and democracy stands for. Remember, while she was speaking at the UN on behalf of our country, she actually called the president Granger, danger. So sometimes you have Freudian slips, and she may have told the truth for the first time. For me, that report in the media made me laugh, as it reveals the level of ineptitude and incompetence and downright anti-democratic postures of the APNU AFC government. For them, nothing has changed. They are still operating as if it is business as usual. Now the GCOM has finally started preparations for general and regional elections, 9 months later than required, and we have identified a date for elections. We can now start the real preparations for the election campaign and mobilizing people to go to vote on election day, or what is called E-Day. The GCOM claims and objections start on October 1st. At present, there are 24 registration centers in the 10 regions. GCOM is expected to create more cluster centers in the regions and mobile teams for the interior regions. I must explain to you that claims and objections is different from the house-to-house registration. House-to-house registration deals with persons who are being registered 14 years and up. Claims and objection is only dealing with those who are eligible to vote and who must be 18 by December 31st, 2019. So all persons born in 2001 who would be 18 as of December 31st, 2019 would be eligible to vote. If they're not on the voters list, they need to go and make a claim. It is a duty of every citizen of Guyana to check the voters list in the areas to ensure, one, that they're posted up as required by law. They're supposed to be put up on the GCOM centers, in the neighborhood schools or churches, temples and so on, so public places where people can view and make sure their names are on the list. And of course, they can call into Freedom House. We have numbers there that we've been advertising on social media if you want to check your name electronically on the database. Now, in the claims objection, let me explain some things to you. So it'll run from October 1st to November 4th, 4 claims. Objections you can make from October 1st to November the 11th. Now, what is a claim? All persons who are Guyanese by birth, who are not on the voters list, will bring in their original birth certificate or a valid passport to a center to make a claim, to put their name on the voters list. They must, of course, as I said, be 18 as of December 31st this year. That clear? When the person makes the claim at the center, GCOM will then do what is called verification. They will subsequently come with the scrutineers to your house, subsequently, to verify that who you say you are and where you're living are the same thing, and that then you will be processed to get your ID card and be put on the list. Guyanese who are by descent, they may be born outside of Guyana to a Guyanese parent, and they're not on the voters list, but they're here. They can bring in their original birth certificate from wherever they were born, or a valid passport, as well as the birth certificate of one of their Guyanese parents, or one parent who's Guyanese, to make a claim to be added to the list. Guyanese, persons who are Guyanese by naturalization, that is, they either married a Guyanese and they now have a registration as Guyanese, have to bring in their marriage certificate and their certificate of registration as a Guyanese citizen to be added to the list. Guyanese who are also persons who are naturalized Guyanese, that is, they became Guyanese by having lived here for 5 years and more, have to bring in their certificate of citizenship and, of course, their birth certificate, etc. Remigrants with foreign passports can apply and be added to the list, but they must bring in their Guyanese birth certificate. So you'll have persons who have been living abroad, have an American passport, Canadian passport, but clearly they were born in Guyana. The passport says born in Guyana. They have to bring in their birth certificate to show that they are claiming. Commonwealth citizens, remember the countries that are in the Commonwealth, are entitled to vote in Guyana once they've been here for a year, legally, and therefore they would have to present a valid passport showing that they have had at least 1 year continuous residency in Guyana. This is not for a person who comes in and out every couple of weeks. This is someone who's resident in Guyana. There are also going to be those persons who want to make transfers. Between 2015 and now, people were on the voters list, are on the voters list, but have moved. They've changed. Some people have moved to the interior, some have moved to the interior to Georgetown, some are studying at the University of Guyana, and therefore on election day they would be in Georgetown. They can make transfers. They do not have to go back to where they're from. They go to the nearest registration to where they're living presently, and they take in their ID card. And so, that is checked on the voters list to make sure that they actually are on the voters list, and then they have to do a transfer. That is done at the center, and then again, like with the verification of a new claim, a new person, GCOM will then have a verification team come to the house subsequently to verify that where you say you're now living, you are now living there. And then the name is transferred from wherever you were originally to the voters list. It is important that the GCOM will ask you, when are you normally home? That's a normal question. You can answer that. But there are no appointments made by GCOM. As they accumulate names or people in areas, they will come and cover an area at a particular time. Now, there are persons who may want to, on the list, to change their name. Who are these persons? For example, a married woman who was not married at the time she was registered, and now she is. She would like to change her name to her husband's name on the voters list. She needs to walk with her marriage certificate, her original marriage certificate, and her ID card, and her original birth certificate and or passport, so that the name can be changed into her husband's name. If a woman is divorced or widowed and she wants to revert back to her maiden name, she will walk with the absolute, which is the nullification of the marriage, by the court. She needs to walk with that and her original birth certificate or an ID card. And in the case of where she's been widowed, she has to walk with her husband's death certificate so that her name can be reverted back to her maiden name. There are also persons who have had name changes sometimes that are legal, deed polls, for example. So a person may be known as this and they have another name known also as this. That they need to, and they want to make sure the voters list reflects the name that they're using based on a deed poll. They need to carry the deed poll and an ID card to make the requested change on the voters list. Now, people can also do other transactions at the centers. For example, your card has been damaged, the laminate is coming off, it got wet, it's all cracked up and broken up, or you've lost it or whatever, or the photograph is so dark you can't tell who's in front of you. It's important for the person who has to replace an ID card that they will collect a form from GCOM, and then that has to be signed by a commissioner of oaths and then taken back to GCOM. This is when a ID card has been lost or damaged, right? So in the case of a photo retake, right, the ID card, the RO must be satisfied, the registration officer must be satisfied that the photograph in fact is so bad that you can't recognize the person in it for a retake of the photograph. So those are some of the things that you need to start knowing about and to be prepared and to encourage relatives and friends who may not be clear on what has to be done in the claims and objection period. It's important for them to know that there is no need for anybody who's on the voters list, the name is right, the ID card number is right, everything's right, there is no need for you to go to the center. So what GCOM had put out on October 26 was absolutely wrong. So don't worry about that, that's been corrected. All you have to do is to check your name, make sure that your name is on the list. If you can't find it, you can call Freedom House, Rob Street, and ask for guidance if they could check the list. GCOM is supposed to post the list on the website, so it's supposed to be a searchable list. I'm not sure if that's been done. As of yesterday, it was not done. So that you are free to check your name, that you know where you are, in which division, and therefore you're clear that you're fine. Don't leave this till last minute, please, my dear friends. I know November 4th looks a whole month away. November the 11th for objections has to do with death certificates. So the only way you can take someone off the list is that the person has deceased. And the only way you can prove that is with a death certificate. So you can't just come in and say that my relative died a couple months ago, I was at the funeral, and I want his name taken off. You can't do that. The relative has to bring in an actual death certificate. And if there's none or you don't have access to it, you cannot remove that name from the list. And anyway, dead people don't vote, so we shouldn't be overly concerned, but nevertheless, wherever there are people who have passed and they have, the relatives have their death certificate, please take it in. It means that we can clean up the list better, and therefore the accusations by APNU that the list is bloated, that can be addressed. So that important, therefore, that please take this civic duty seriously, very, very seriously, and to go to check in your neighborhood. The schools generally have the list posted up. Remember, in some schools, the lists are very big. In some parts of Georgetown, you may have to look through alphabetically or by street. Sometimes they're organized in a way that can be confusing for people. Walk with your ID card to check, or as I said, online if you can check in a searchable website using your ID card number or your name. So please don't leave for last minute. For those who have to do transfers, please do them early. The GCOM is supposed to be, excuse me, going to interior locations starting from early next week to do the claims and objections. Unfortunately, in many areas of the interior, the lists have not reached the villages as yet, so that I'm hoping and praying that when GCOM does arrive, that the communities will be alerted well in advance, so they will come out first to check if their names are on the list, and if they're not, to be able to make claims and or transfers. Otherwise, many people may not actually even know if they're on the list and may not be able to know whether they have to do a transfer or a claim. So I'm asking commerce who have connections with the interior communities to make sure that people are on the alert and that GCOM gives them adequate time to come in so that people can be mobilized to come out with their ID cards or with their documents so they can make claims and their transfers. That's about it for this week in terms of getting you au fait with the claims and objection. And as I said, we know that the government is petrified to face the electorate. We know that. But we have our work to do, and we have to make sure that our citizens understand in these elections what is at stake. Do we want to restore constitutional rule? Do we want to uphold our supreme law of our land, our constitution, or do we want to continue with this government that has defied the constitution? Before I open the lines, I'll do it in a minute, I just wanted to take note of, in case anybody felt that I had ignored it, and that we saw last weekend the overtopping of the sea defenses along sections of the West Coast Demerara and Region 5 Maikoni area. Many of these sea defenses were neglected in the last 4 years by the APNU government. Hundreds of families were affected, approximately, I understand, over 400 families according to the CDC, and rice and other crops and livestock and personal property have been damaged or lost. I'm glad that the opposition leader and General Secretary of the PPP, Jagdeo, and presidential candidate Irfan Ali and other PPP leaders were out there in those areas lending support and solidarity. Much of this could have been avoided, even with climate change and unpredictable weather patterns, if the government wasn't wasting money in many areas and not paying attention to what was absolutely critical, the maintenance and grading and upgrading of our sea defenses. So that, let me open the floor now, or the phones, for the callers. Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
Yes, Comrade Gail.
Yes, good morning. Good afternoon.
Morning. Have a pleasant day.
Thank you.
If you hadn't said those things, we would never know we're going. We never even know that it's Commonwealth. Or
Really?
or you know you're reading nothing, you're seeing nothing. They're mentioning them things.
These are powerful statements, boy. Powerful.
But I'm glad you're able to skin them up. You gotta get them out. Moon is run till day catches.
Right, exactly.
Lord, have a pleasant day.
Thank you. Yeah, these are powerful statements. Remember, 116 countries. These three bodies represent 116 countries of the world, took a position on Granger and Guyana. Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Matter of Public Importance.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
I knew what was happening. I knew about who had spoken to him and who had spoken out of all of the countries. But this you're saying now, this I was very worried since they were doing registration. I'm really worried about this because you just said that they'll come to your house. During the registration period, I had a son who worked late, and I had to call the main office, and they give me the local number. So I was keep calling him. Now you can come because my son is here. There was one son who's not, but I make sure I call them one Sunday and make sure they come immediately
Yeah.
to do my registration.
Yeah, but don't mix up the two things. Don't mix up the two things. Claims and objections.
It's not claims and objections.
No. What you're doing now, I know what you're telling me about house to house, but what we're dealing with now is claims and objections. So if someone's name is on the list, there is no need to do anything.
Okay.
If the person is not on the list, or they want to do a transfer, they have to make a claim at the center, not at
I clearly understand what you're saying.
And then they come and verify.
I work in my area.
And they come and verify.
I went around in my area and find out who are registered, who people come to them, and if all of you are registered, all that everybody come. I work in my area, which is Montrose. And it's sad because I met one of your parliamentarians. She came to Armando, and I went up to her, and I was asking her, how do we check people's names? And she didn't respond, as if she is not interested like me. You know, she asked, are there a list in our area? Madam Teixeira, there is no list in our area. None.
Oh, and that's Monrepo.
Montrose.
Oh, Montrose.
There are 4 villages in there. There are Montrose, there are Weislos, there are Brothers.
Right.
And there are Weislos North. So Mark, this is a crowded area.
Yeah.
And this is where we had the problem the last election.
Yeah.
Because we had one school with 12 booths, maybe more than that because they were downstairs. I didn't check.
Right.
So I want to say this because so now they would go people who didn't check their name before we were there. I was there. I didn't vote. I was helping people to check their names.
Right.
Offering people to pay their passage, to wait a little bit, to have patience.
Right.
This is work that I've been doing for maybe 3-4 elections. But the last one was very, very difficult because they were making it, and I'm a very, very bright person. I'm not self-praising myself. But I was there, you had to go in the line downstairs at the shed.
Right.
The 2-person there had the computer. Okay?
Mm.
So you had to be lining up as you're going to the polls.
Right.
Right? So I stood behind 2 persons. And I heard them, what they were doing. This is deliberately done. So we have to look at this. She's saying, no, you don't have to vote here. You have to vote over the line. And, you know, people get disgusted and go away. There were like 7 persons who went away. And then but I already knew where we voted the last and the same place we had to go again. Right? So there were people who were deliberately there, and we had to look upon that. We did it. We take it upon ourselves. One person, he passed away. Me alone are left in this area. I alone are left in this area to do the work. Unfortunately, I spoke to your parliamentarian. She visits our area. She seems not to want to. I was just telling her the details. This is desperate details. And she's calling upon some auntie, and I went there to sit with her and tell her that we haven't had a chance to verify our name yet. When can you do it for us?
Okay, what I'll do, because we don't want to hold up all this, but one, I will check to find out why GCOM hasn't posted up any list in your area. That's number 1. Number 2 is that the party groups and so on are supposed to have the list for that area and are supposed to
nobody
walk.
Came down now. Nobody
All right, okay, well, the list was just issued on October 1st, so some areas may not have got their action
like you
started
said, we
yet.
need to do it now.
No, I agree,
if
absolutely.
It's not there, then we have to,
Absolutely.
to get it there.
This is the coast. This is not interior where I have to work. So, yeah, no, I agree with you. So I am going to follow up as soon as we finish the program to find out what is going on and what is the delay, and to ensure that people walk around and check the list so people know, 1, are they on the list? 2, if they're not on the list, that they have to go do a transfer or they have to do a claim.
I
and
know
what
where
they
you
have to do.
I've been sending people there. That's the Better Hope the Vice Road, Dr. Sankar office.
All right, well, it's now starting. The claims objection now starting.
Yeah, but we have
So-
to still tell people and remind
Of
them,
course,
go to their
of
houses.
course.
You have to do it. You have
Of course.
You may be tired, but you have to do it. You
I
have
will
to do
follow
it.
up on this, but let me now take some other calls. Thank you very much, and I'll follow up on this to make sure that people take this thing seriously.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Hello, good afternoon. Okay, well, now we're into the we're now into the business of elections. Finally. And so now we're into full throttle, ensuring in this phase that people are on the voters list, that ought to be on the voters list, that all people who are on the voters list are eligible to be on the voters list, that people who have moved and so on and married and so on, that their names are reflected correctly on the list, and that we have scrutineers that are monitoring what GCOM is doing on the ground, that we have civil society, party groups, etc., advising people what to do, where to go. This is a whole movement, people's movement, to ensure that there is no hanky-panky during elections on March the 2nd. And the work does not start on March the 2nd. The work starts now in terms of making sure that we have a clean voters list, a voters list where people's names are on the list, and when they turn up to vote, they will have the right to vote. One quick call, and then I know the technician will cut me off at some point. Yes, good afternoon. Welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
Good afternoon.
You're the
I
very
just
last
want to
caller.
find out
Yes.
how that saying our president is a caretaker president and everybody in parliament still getting salary. That we want to know. So if we are getting paid, so you want to know who fooling who. And we want to know Mr. Granger knew about God, but I know you all know about God.
Thank you. The members of parliament and the government ministers are all being paid. And in fact, until the parliament is dissolved, which is a procedural issue, which the president has to do by December the 2nd, that everyone is paid. I'm not an MP anymore, so I'm not paid. But there are three of us MPs who resigned who are not paid, because obviously we're not MPs anymore on the PEP side. Until procedurally the president dissolves parliament, he and the entire parliament will be paid, as are the regional democratic councillors as well. When the president dissolves parliament and the RDCs, that is when all the MPs other than ministers and the president and prime minister will not receive their salaries anymore. So the president, prime minister, and the ministers will receive their salaries up to the day of the elections. No one else, MPs both on the opposition side and the government side, will stop receiving salaries as of, I believe, December 2nd, when the president has to dissolve the RDCs and the Parliament, the National Assembly. The issue of the illegality of the president is clear as a constitutional issue. That does not mean, has nothing to do with the fact of MPs, whether they're being paid or not. This is a new manufactured arrangement of the APNU AFC to throw sand in your eyes. Nothing can get away from the fact that Granger is illegal. He did not hold elections in compliance with the Constitution by March the 21st, 2019, and was given a second chance to do it by September 18, 2019. And again, he didn't do it. So this has nothing to do with the fact that MPs being paid or not. And we always seem to think there are only MPs on one side of the House. There are MPs on both sides of the House. And there are ministers on the government side and MPs on the government side. So, for me, Parliament is dead, and I've said that publicly. However, procedurally, that doesn't get away from the constitutional requirement that the President has to dissolve the Parliament. And until he does that, and he could have done that before March the 21st, and no one would have been paid. In fact, everyone has been paid way beyond March 21st when the elections were due. Everyone. So please, you're just throwing smoke in people's eyes. That's not an issue of importance right now. The importance right now is that through a long struggle, a difficult struggle, Mr. Granger was finally forced to name a date for election by proclamation on March the 2nd. And now, 14 months later, we will finally have the right to vote and to name our elected representatives. Long delayed, but we are patient people. So have a great weekend. Don't drink and drive. Be careful. Make sure you check the list in your area. If they're not posted up in your areas, in the schools, and so on, call Freedom House. Let us know. Let the people in the area know. Go to GCOM and report it that the lists are not up in your areas, so that you're able to check and make sure you are there and ready to vote on March the 2nd. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care. Bye-bye. Ta-ta.
You can pay as you're singing around town.
Call 800-399-7853. That's 800-399-7853. 800-399-7853.
Here we go. Here we go. Bing. Now, Stan, you're up first. You may have A or B.
I'll have A, please.
You'll have A. Anything you say, Stan. Stan wants A. He's got it. Sydney said, "My wife and I don't need a birth control device. We already have one. It's her blank." My wife and I don't need a birth control device. We already have one. It's her blank.
Got it.
Good.
Got it.
I am peeking over your shoulder, Abe.
Yes.
All right.
Very good.
There we go.
That would maybe.
Now, about ready to start, are we? Yes, go ahead, finish. That's a perfectly good one. Terrific. There you go. They need a little coaching and urging. They're all very insecure. Performers aren't that way, Stan. Now we come to you. Sydney said, "My wife and I don't need a birth control device. We already have one. It's her blank."
Her looks.
Her looks. Yes. Where are you traveling to next, Stan? He said her looks, Abe. What do you say?
Oh, I just wrote a kind of a high-class answer.
Yeah.
Her character.
Her character. Hey, you know, you and Stan were kind of on the same wavelength there, looks and character.
Well, no, I meant looks because she's a hell of a character.
Yes?
I don't know what's wrong with me.
What?
I have a terrible headache.
Oh, it's her headache. We already have a birth control device. It's her headache. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give her for acting?
That was excellent.
Yes, I thought it was well done, too, yes.
For her. No, I said age. She was 71.
She was 71. We already have one. It's her age.